Want to get to my guest on the Miller Lite Jersey Central Newsmaker Hotline. As you know, the Catholic Church still reeling from this grand jury report. It was released in August. And if you think about Pennsylvania, where this happened, it estimated hundreds of priests in that state molested more than 1,000 children, and this dates all the way back to the 1940s. Grand jury was enabled to identify over 1,000 individual victims. There could be thousands more who will still come forward. And this is through the church's own records that were previously hidden in some secret archives. Now, these archives were first discovered by my guest who was with me here. He's fought for survivors of predator priests for over 30 years. And let's welcome preeminent attorney Richard Serbin to WCTC this morning. Richard, good morning. It's Burt Barron. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you, Bert.
I want to talk specifically about Pennsylvania, but I also want to use it to kind of set the stage as to what we're getting into here in New Jersey, because based upon this grand jury report in August, our lawmakers and our attorney general, they sprung into action immediately and said, we need to have a similar investigation and something along the lines here in New Jersey, so we don't have a Pennsylvania or we don't have anything like that that we can be compared to. But let's talk about Pennsylvania first. The grand jury findings, and what does this mean to survivors of these abusive priests, Richard? What does this mean to them?
Well, it means validation of what they've been saying, both in public and in private. In the beginning, when I started over 30 years ago, 1987, no one could believe that a priest would commit such evil acts upon innocent children. Now the public does believe it, and they understand that bishops are willing to cover up these heinous acts against children. So it gives them validation in the sense that if they speak out, they will now be believed.
Long overdue, but I'm glad that it's finally happening. And we're going to have people, Richard, who knows how many people just are afraid to come forward. There's shame, there's stigma. These are people now who are adults. These could be adult men in their 40s or 50s or 60s. What can they do to come forward, to get over the fear of coming forward? How do you convince them to come out of the shadows and share their story and get the justice they deserve?
Well, first of all, they need to talk to someone they feel comfortable and trust. Trust is a major issue because their trust has been betrayed by someone they've been taught to respect and honor. So they need to talk to someone that's willing to listen. They can contact us at jjsjustice.com/church. They can contact the Attorney General's hotline in their state, including New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I think now is an opportunity that heretofore survivors of child sex abuse did not have, because now we recognize that this does happen. And I think armed with this knowledge, there will be more survivors that will speak out.
I'm sure. And it's an incredible burden to carry for decades and decades of your life, Richard. I mean, imagine being a young child and you run and tell somebody like you're supposed to do. Well, tell your parents and they kind of doubt you. When you tell church officials and they kind of doubt you. These are people that were just, listen, I'm a victim here and I did everything I was supposed to do. No one believes me, and the person is going to get away with this. These could be priests or church officials that died decades ago, Richard. What sort of penalty are they going to suffer? Really nothing if they're dead, right?
Well, even those that are alive have not suffered penalties because our laws actually protect child predators and those that shield them. Of the over 300 priests identified by the Pennsylvania grand jury, I'm only aware of one that served any time in jail, and that was relatively recent. They've escaped any punishment. The church leaders and bishops who covered up this sexual abuse, who knew about it and moved these child predators to new assignments, they have not paid any price either. So exposing this, and what happened in Pennsylvania is not unique. It's happened all over the country. It is a systematic problem, not unique to Pennsylvania. I'm sure it's going on in New Jersey as well, and I'm happy to hear that in New Jersey the grand jury is investigating, and it needs to be investigated. These crimes against children need to be exposed.
Yeah, I agree completely. And before anybody thinks that, well, Bert, you're just going after the church, I happen to be a practicing Catholic here in New Jersey. I'm a churchgoer, and I'm a person of faith. And listen, anybody that harms a kid, I don't care if it was a week ago, a year ago, a month ago, 30 years ago, you need to be punished for doing so. And before people think I'm picking on one particular faith or not, I definitely am not. This leads to the million-dollar question here, Richard. As I mentioned to you, based upon the findings of this grand jury report, I'm telling you, our lawmakers mobilized immediately. One of our local senators who represents us in Trenton is leading this. He's been with the Attorney General. We're getting to the stage where we're talking about public hearings and getting people together and kind of going block by block and county by county, looking for victims to come forward and tell their stories and start to begin a process here. This is something that could take years and years before justice is finally served, isn't it?
Yes, and that's great news, and thank you. I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak to you and your listening public.
All right, thank you. One more time for that website you had mentioned, Richard?
jjsjustice.com/church.